And with that, we bring in John Malcolm, Vice President of the Institute for Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, and Greg Nunziata, former Chief Nomination for Counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Gentlemen, submit to the judge that you are both experts, and we will move on. Greg, first to you. Amy Coney Barrett was first brought up in 2017 and vetted then. One would imagine she was sort of getting ready and has in the back of her mind the possibility of going through this confirmation process. But the starting gun has gone off now. Between now and October 12th, what is happening to get her ready for this confirmation process?
Well, there's a lot happening, both at the White House and in the Senate, as the Senate gears up for these hearings and the White House helps prepare Judge Barrett for what's going to be an ordeal. I mean, these confirmation hearings are tough. They're 4 days long and lots of hours in that witness chair for the nominee. So I'm sure she will be busy at the White House doing practice sessions, what they sometimes call murder boards, where lawyers from the White House counsel's office and the Justice Department kind of play the role of senators and put her through her paces. She'll also be expected to spend time on Capitol Hill meeting privately with senators, and those can be consequential meetings as well. We've heard in the last few hours at least two Democratic senators have said that they will not take these meetings with her. And I would suspect if I were her or her advisors, I'd be relieved. Those meetings can be painful, and they take up really precious preparation time that she'd rather be spending getting ready for those public hearings.
You know, John, I guess this brings up an important question. Does any of these meetings and any of this prep really matter? It seems so much is already baked in. When you've got Democrats saying, I'm not going to meet with somebody, hard to imagine that that's really advice and consent as much as it is just obstruction.
Well, they can give advice or consent or withhold advice and consent. The hearings are certainly consequential. In terms of these private meetings, there may be instances in which a senator or two is on the bubble, in which case I suppose those private meetings can lead to. I mean,
you guys at Heritage have been doing a lot of nose counts. Is there anybody on the bubble right now? Haven't we heard from everybody effectively?
Certainly not on the Democratic side. And on the Republican side, Susan Collins has already said she's a no vote. So I guess you're talking about, Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, one or two others.
Well, Murkowski as well came out and said that she doesn't think that the person, she thinks that we should wait till after the election.
She said she should wait till after the election, but she has not committed that she will vote no if the process takes place before the election.
Fair point. Greg, back to you. The lines of attack against Amy Coney Barrett seem to be not really on her credentials or on her intellect, but basically on her judicial philosophy. And then you have Dianne Feinstein, who brought us sort of the more personal attacks based on her personal faith and sort of how she has lived her life. How do you defend against those?
Well, they're two different questions. And on the personal attacks, I really think it's a mistake. I think we've seen senators make that mistake with past nominees. I think it was a mistake in her circuit court process. But particularly in the Supreme Court context, these hearings are going to be watched by millions of people. And I think there's naturally some sympathy for a nominee that's being pushed on personal characteristics, on aspects of their family life or their faith life. I think that's bound to backfire on Democrats. I think it would be unwise. But Judge Barrett just needs to use this opportunity to introduce herself to America. I think Americans are going to see she's not as scary as the Democrats want to portray her, both in human terms and in jurisprudential terms. She's been a law professor. She understands her judicial views very well. She's taught them to students for years, and she can explain them to the Senate and the American people quite competently.
John, judicial views bring up an interesting point, because so often when we watch these confirmation hearings, especially as of late, there seems to be this verbal jujitsu between I want to uphold precedent, I believe in precedent, but I'm not going to talk about the precedents I agree with and disagree with, but at the time the court has overturned precedents. Amy Coney Barrett's views on certain things, especially when it comes to abortion and Obamacare, are pretty well known. Does that become problematic for Republicans, not necessarily in terms of her qualifications, but as we look at this just going to be 15 or 20 days before the election?
Well, look, she's going to do what Ruth Bader Ginsburg did for her confirmation hearings, which is to say, I won't give you any hints or suggestions as to how I will rule. She has talked about abortion, Roe versus Wade in general, as precedent and how she would approach a case like that. And she criticized Chief Justice Roberts' reading in the original Obamacare case. The legal issue that's presented in the case before the court this term is a different one. So, she is well placed to talk about jurisprudence. She has written unbelievably thoughtfully in that regard, which is why academics, for instance, of all ideological stripes, have said this is a brilliant mind who really ought to be on the court.
Yeah, there's some op-eds going around on a number of publications, John, essentially saying, I may not necessarily agree with her, but she deserves to be on the court, or certainly we can't question her qualifications. Greg, what's gone into the vet here? What does the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Majority Counsel's Office for Lindsey Graham, know right now, and what are they worried about?
Well, I suppose a nice thing for the Senate, particularly with an aggressively scheduled process, is that they've considered her before. It's just been 3 years since her appellate court hearing. So they have read everything she wrote up to that point. They've examined it critically. They've looked for weaknesses. And then in the less public part of the process, which hopefully doesn't get into the newspapers, they've also looked at her FBI file, her personal character and background, and vetted all that just 3 years ago. So they're familiar to start with. And the next few weeks is I think, going to be mostly focused for their preparation time on her 3 years on the bench now, reading her opinions and the opinions she's joined. I don't think they are terribly worried about anything. I think that Senate Republicans are very comfortable with this nominee. They fought for her confirmation 3 years ago, and they're comfortable making the case again today to a broader audience. And I think that broader audience is just to Senate Republicans' advantage. I think we saw yesterday at the White House that she's a very kind of likable presence, and giving her the spotlight will be in her favor.
Yeah, she did have a sort of incredible poise during that. John, finishing up with you, is we look at this from an election perspective. She was confirmed with just 3 Democratic votes onto the circuit court. Unlikely, as you pointed out, that you're going to get any Democratic defections. Probably impossible, really, that you're going to get any Democratic defections for this. And then you compare that just 2 decades ago, which is not that long ago, that you had Supreme Court nominees confirmed by overwhelming, if not unanimous, votes. Do we ever go back to that time?
No. That genie is out of the bottle. The Supreme Court takes on, I don't think they always should, a lot of very, very contentious issues that really ought to be left up to the legislative process. And because the public and many senators view them as super legislators, they're going to treat them, they're going to treat them that way and look for guarantees that a justice is going to vote the way they want on their issue. I'm afraid that more civil time is likely gone.
Yeah, well, sometimes progress is not necessarily a good thing. Gents, John, Greg, appreciate both of you sticking around till the end of the hour. We'll revisit this after that. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.